The fatal comment. Lieutenant Orion Kane had attended dozens of diplomatic receptions during his career in the Terran Defense Corps, and he knew the rules by heart. Keep your drink light, your conversation neutral, and your eyes on the right people. That was it. Simple. Survival 101. Yet, here he was, standing in the grand observation hall of the luxury space cruiser Celestial Harmony, failing spectacularly at all three rules. The reception was meant to strengthen relations between humans and several allied species across the galaxy. Orion's job was straightforward. Represent humanity politely, make small talk with alien dignitaries, and avoid doing anything that might require a formal apology from higher command. He was failing. Miserably. The problem wasn't the crowd, nor the sparkling starlight that streamed through the panoramic windows. The problem was Commander Lyra Vera, the Ctheran naval officer who seemed to command attention wherever she walked. The Ctherans were a stunning race, known for their tall, elegant frames and skin that shifted colors with their emotions. Their pointed ears and sharp facial features gave them an otherworldly beauty. Lyra embodied every one of these traits and more. She moved through the reception with a grace that made humans seem clumsy in comparison. Her ceremonial uniform, perfectly tailored, emphasized a figure that seemed sculpted from classical art. Pale blue skin indicated her professional focus, while her silver hair, woven into intricate braids, marked her rank and prestige. Orion had tried to look away, he really had, but his brain refused to cooperate. Impressive display of alien diplomacy, isn't it? A familiar voice interrupted. Lieutenant Arya Solis, his fellow officer and friend, had joined him by the observation window. She followed his gaze across the room. Orion didn't answer right away. His eyes lingered on Lyra as she conversed with Centran trade representatives. Something inside him, against all reason and training, decided to speak before he could stop it. "Yeah," Orion said, and then, without thinking, added, "Especially that Ctheran commander's ass. It's perfect." The words hung in the air like a plasma grenade with a faulty timer. Instantly, the room went silent. Heads turned. Conversations froze. All eyes seemed to pierce Orion like laser beams. His heart stopped for a moment. The realization hit him like a collision with a graviton field. He had just committed possibly the worst diplomatic blunder in human history. "Oh no," Arya whispered beside him, her eyes wide with horror. "Oh, Orion. Please tell me you didn't just—" "I did," he muttered, his voice barely audible, as he watched Lyra slowly turn toward him, her eyes dark, flecked with silver, and impossibly intelligent, locked on him. Orion could feel them studying him like a predator sizing up prey. Her skin shifted through colors he couldn't read, and the unreadable expression on her face sent a shiver down his spine. He had three options, none of them good. Apologize, cross the room under dozens of witnesses. Flee, probably a career-ending move. Faint, suddenly looking like the safest escape. Before he could choose, Lyra began walking toward him. The crowd seemed to part automatically, as if she commanded her own gravitational field. Her skin shifted to a warm gold tone, a color he guessed signaled something important in Ctheran communication. She stopped just in front of him, close enough that Orion could smell a faint, intoxicating scent, something like cinnamon and starlight. Even in his polished boots, he had to look up to meet her gaze. "Lieutenant Kane," she said, her voice melodic and precise, every word a blend of authority and musicality. "I believe you have something to say to me." Orion's mouth opened, closed, and opened again. Every diplomatic protocol he had ever learned evaporated, leaving him standing like a deer caught in headlights. That is, Commander, I sincerely apologize for my inappropriate comment," he finally managed. It was unprofessional and he knew it, but it was the truth. Lyra's skin shifted to a deeper, glowing gold. "I'm sorry, what?" She smiled, revealing teeth slightly sharper than human norms. Orion's heart raced for reasons beyond fear. "Your assessment of my posterior anatomy," she said, her voice calm and deliberate. "Was it accurate?" Orion blinked. His mind struggled to process her words. The hall was quiet enough that he could hear his own heartbeat. Around them, diplomats had pulled out recording devices. Some officers were whispering bets. "Yes," Orion said, almost as a question rather than a statement. "Excellent," Lyra replied, her smile widening. "Since you seem so interested, Lieutenant Kane, perhaps you'd like a private lesson in our cultural practices." The words carried across the silent hall. Orion could hear gasps and murmurs. Ambassador Rintrell looked like he was taking notes, while some Alto Iran officers seemed to be quietly wagering on what might happen next. Orion's brain short-circuited. "Are you propositioning me? In front of everyone?" Lyra laughed. Bright, genuine, musical. "Oh, Lieutenant, you have so much to learn about Ctheran culture. What you see is called combat flirtation. It's a tradition to determine compatibility." Orion looked around. The crowd of diplomats and military officers were watching like spectators at a tournament. Their fascination was palpable. "If you're brave enough to continue," Lyra said, her skin swirling in gold and silver patterns, mesmerizing in the ambient light, "we'll discover whether your interest goes deeper than surface attraction." "And if I'm not brave enough?" Orion asked, trying to hide his mix of fear and excitement. Lyra's expression turned predatory, her skin glowing with an inner light. "Then you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what you missed when you had the chance to court a Ctheran commander." Orion felt a reckless grin spread across his face. Somehow, his embarrassing slip of the tongue had turned into the most thrilling challenge of his life. "Commander Lyra Vera," he said, straightening in his uniform, "I accept your trial." The room erupted in applause. Cheers, whistles, and alien equivalents of cheering filled the hall. Orion met Lyra's eyes, seeing approval and something else, anticipation. "Excellent," she said, extending her arm in the formal Ctheran gesture of invitation. "Let the trial begin." As Orion took her arm, he realized one thing. Speaking without thinking had just led him into the most dangerous, exciting, and unforgettable night of his life. The Alien Challenge. Orion Kane's heart raced as he took Commander Lyra Vera's arm. The warmth of her skin beneath the ceremonial uniform was disarming. He could feel the eyes of dozens of dignitaries, officers, and diplomats following every small movement. Every step he took seemed heavier than the last, as if gravity itself wanted to remind him that he was human and she wasn't. The commander's golden-hued skin glowed subtly, signaling something Orion couldn't quite interpret. Was it approval, amusement, or a warning? He had no way of knowing, but he understood one thing clearly. There was no turning back. Lyra guided him to the center of the observation hall, where the crowd naturally parted, leaving a wide circle around them. The assembled spectators, alien and human alike, watched like they were witnessing the opening of an intergalactic tournament. Cameras and recording devices were raised. The room was alive with tension and curiosity, and Orion could feel the weight of the moment pressing against his chest. "Lieutenant Kane," Lyra began, her voice carrying effortlessly over the crowd. "You have made a bold and unusual statement. I am prepared to accept it as a starting point." Her words flowed in a rhythm that was almost musical, though Orion had no time to marvel. In Ctheran culture, honesty, even when crude, is not punished. It is evaluated. For you, this will be a test of courage, intellect, and adaptability. We call it combat flirtation. Orion blinked. He had expected anger, perhaps a formal reprimand, maybe even a humiliating public scolding. But this was something entirely different. He swallowed hard. "Combat flirtation?" he asked. "You mean, like a duel?" Lyra's silver-flecked eyes sparkled. "Yes, in a way. It is both a courtship and a challenge. Each participant presents ideas, tests, and provocations to the other. Failure to respond appropriately leads to elimination, from the ritual, not necessarily from life. Although, she added with a sly curve to her smile, humiliation is a likely side effect. Orion's mouth went dry. Elimination, humiliation, and all this in front of dozens of witnesses? He looked around the room. He caught the briefest glimpses of other officers exchanging looks of disbelief. Some were trying to hide laughter. Others looked genuinely fascinated. Arya Solis gave him a small, encouraging nod, and he forced himself to focus. He could do this. He had to. Lyra tilted her head, her golden and silver skin shifting in intricate patterns, and said, "You may choose to retreat now, Lieutenant, or you may step forward and accept the first challenge." The room seemed to hold its collective breath. Retreating would be embarrassing, but stepping forward? Dangerous. His mind ran through possibilities, analyzing every consequence. And then a thought struck him, oddly clear amidst his fear. This was the most thrilling opportunity of his life. He straightened in his uniform. "I accept the challenge, Commander Vera," he said, projecting as much confidence as he could muster. A ripple of surprise went through the assembled crowd. Some aliens leaned forward, intrigued. Humans whispered among themselves, clearly trying to assess what was about to unfold. Lyra's smile widened ever so slightly, sharp teeth catching the light. "Excellent. The trial begins." She stepped closer, the scent of cinnamon and starlight stronger now, almost intoxicating. "Your first challenge, Lieutenant Kane, is simple in concept but difficult in execution. Convince me that a human tactical officer is worthy of the attention of a Ctheran commander. Speak honestly, and speak boldly." Orion's mind raced. How could he impress a species that was so alien, so advanced, and yet so intensely observant? He searched for the right words, knowing that every phrase, every hesitation would be analyzed. He took a deep breath and met Lyra's gaze, noting how her eyes seemed to pierce straight into him. "Commander Vera," he began, steadying himself, "I am the only person in this room bold enough to speak what others only think, and I am the only one willing to accept a challenge directly from someone like you. I am honest, I am brave, and I am fascinated by the unknown. Your presence is commanding. It challenges me in ways that no human experience ever could." Lyra's skin shifted through a sequence of golds and silvers that Orion guessed indicated approval. She leaned forward slightly, her gaze sharpening. "Bold, honest, unusual, acceptable." Orion let out a quiet breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. But there was no time to celebrate. Lyra's eyes glimmered with curiosity and amusement. "Second challenge," she said, her voice echoing lightly in the hall. "Requires demonstration. Can you match the intellect and strategy of someone who commands entire starships? Can you think beyond what your species defines as tactical problem-solving?" Orion nodded. His mind snapped into focus. He had trained for moments like this, not exactly for alien courtship, but for high-stakes strategy under impossible pressure. He allowed himself a brief flash of confidence. "I anticipate moves before they happen, Commander," he said. "I study the patterns of my opponents, analyze the variables, and adjust in real time. Just as I study the stars to predict their behavior, I can study people. I can learn, adapt, and match the challenge you present." Lyra's eyes sparkled with interest. The color of her skin shifted into swirling golden patterns. Around them, the crowd stirred. Some began whispering excitedly, others recording every word. Orion felt an unexpected surge of pride. He was impressing her, not just surviving. "Third challenge," Lyra said, stepping closer, her voice lowering so that it carried a note of both threat and promise. "Engage me in a debate of intellect, philosophy, and tactical insight. Match my pace or be left behind." Orion's brain kicked into overdrive. Every ounce of tactical training, every lesson in human philosophy, every study of alien culture, all of it now mattered. Words flowed, ideas clashed, concepts intertwined. Lyra's arguments were rapid, complex, and layered with nuance. Orion responded point by point, counterpoint by counterpoint, weaving human logic with observations of alien strategy. The crowd watched, mesmerized. Whispers turned to murmurs. Some leaned forward, trying to catch every syllable. Others simply watched in awe as Orion Kane, human, untrained in the ways of the galaxy's most sophisticated species, kept pace with a master commander. Finally, Lyra laughed. A sound bright, melodic, and genuine. Impressive, Lieutenant Kane. You may actually be worth the effort required to train you properly. Orion's chest swelled with pride. He had survived the first rounds. But he knew this was only the beginning. Lyra's gaze softened, yet it carried a weight that made his stomach tighten. The next challenges would test not only his mind but his heart and courage. And in that moment, Orion realized something. This was no ordinary diplomatic reception. This was the start of something extraordinary. Tactical brilliance. Orion Kane's mind was buzzing. Every instinct he had as a tactical officer was screaming at him. Focus, observe, calculate. But this wasn't a battlefield he knew. This was a battlefield of intellect, culture, and courage. And the opponent was Commander Lyra Vera, the most formidable Ktheran officer he had ever met. The observation hall of the Celestial Harmony had transformed. No longer just a room for polite conversation, it was now a stage. Around them, diplomats and military officers formed a wide circle, watching intently. Some whispered, others recorded every movement. Orion could feel the weight of their eyes on him, but he forced himself to concentrate. Lyra's silver-flecked eyes locked on his. Her skin glowed with golden patterns that shifted subtly, a language he didn't fully understand but could interpret through instinct. Approval mixed with challenge. The next phase, she said, her melodic voice carrying across the hall, will test your tactical thinking, not only human tactics but interspecies strategies. You must anticipate outcomes and react with creativity. Are you ready, Lieutenant Kane? Orion nodded firmly. I'm ready, Commander Vera. Lyra's lips curved into a small, approving smile. Very well. The first tactical challenge is simple to state, though not simple to solve. Imagine a simulated interstellar conflict. You command a small human fleet tasked with defending a critical trade corridor against a superior enemy force. Your allies are scattered, and communication is partially compromised. How do you proceed? Orion took a deep breath. Years of tactical training flooded his mind. His hands clenched briefly at his sides. Commander, he said confidently, first, I assess the enemy's capabilities and likely strategies. Then, I prioritize defending critical points while creating opportunities for counterattacks. I coordinate with the allies I can reach, using predictive models to anticipate enemy moves. I also employ deception, creating false signals to confuse the adversary and gain an advantage. Lyra's ears tilted forward slightly, a sign of approval in Ktheran culture. Her skin shifted to a brighter gold with hints of silver swirling through. Impressive, she said softly. You have anticipated, adapted, and planned creatively. Now consider the ethical implications. A tactical choice may save the fleet but put civilian populations at risk. How do you decide? Orion's brow furrowed. This was not just strategy, it was morality. I weigh the mission's objectives against potential casualties. The safety of civilians is paramount. If there's a way to achieve the mission while minimizing harm, I choose that. I trust my calculations, but I also rely on judgment, experience, and the counsel of my officers. Morality and strategy must work together. Lyra's skin shifted again, swirling in golden and silver patterns that seemed almost hypnotic. You demonstrate clarity of thought and ethical reasoning. Excellent. Now, third challenge. Adapt quickly. Imagine the enemy changes tactics mid-conflict, creating unexpected openings and threats. React in real time. Orion's mind raced. In simulation training, this scenario was common. In real life, rare. And in front of dozens of witnesses, including alien dignitaries? Unthinkable. Yet he focused, visualizing the fleet in his mind. I would reassess the situation immediately, identifying the new threats and opportunities. I would issue rapid, flexible orders to maximize the fleet's survival and success. Deception, predictive tactics, and swift adaptation are critical. I would also communicate directly with available allies to coordinate responses, even improvising signals if standard communication fails. Lyra nodded, her skin now a complex blend of gold and silver, each swirl reflecting her growing respect. You demonstrate the ability to anticipate and respond with precision. Very few humans possess this level of tactical creativity. You are exceeding expectations. Orion allowed himself a brief exhale. His confidence grew, but he knew better than to relax. Lyra was far from done. "Fourth challenge," she said, stepping closer, her voice softening into an almost intimate tone. "I want you to predict my response to your strategy. Consider my possible actions as a Ctheran commander. How would you counter or collaborate?" Orion's pulse quickened. Now he was being tested not only on strategy, but on his ability to read her mind and adapt to her thinking. He focused, recalling every interaction, every gesture, every tiny behavioral cue he had observed since the start of the evening. "Commander Vera," he began carefully, "I would anticipate your decisive and precise nature. I would expect you to exploit any weakness I present. Therefore, I would act unpredictably, balancing caution with calculated risk. I would also observe your patterns closely, adapting as you act, creating an ongoing exchange of strategic thought." Lyra's eyes gleamed, and her skin glimmered in a mesmerizing dance of gold and silver. "Remarkable," she said. "You do not merely react. You anticipate, you adapt, and you engage. You may yet survive the trial, and perhaps even impress me." Orion felt a rush of adrenaline. He had not only survived the first tactical challenge, he had thrived. But he knew the trial would continue to test him in ways he could not yet predict. Lyra's smile hinted at both challenge and promise, a reminder that danger and reward were inseparable in this alien ritual. Suddenly, the commander's tone shifted, sharp yet melodic. "Final tactical demonstration for this stage. A real-time scenario. You and I are commanders of opposing fleets in a contested star system. Communication is limited. Stakes are high. Convince me of your approach while maintaining respect for both strategy and ethics. Begin now." Orion felt the room shrink around him. Every eye, every recording device, every whispering spectator disappeared. This was a duel unlike any he had faced. He spoke quickly but carefully, outlining maneuvers, contingency plans, and ethical considerations. He anticipated Lyra's likely countermoves, weaving flexibility and boldness into every decision. The crowd watched, rapt. Alien officers leaned forward, diplomats whispered, and even Arya Solis gave him a look of awe. Orion's mind worked like a finely tuned weapon, each sentence calculated, precise, and fluid. When he finished, the hall was silent. Lyra studied him for a long moment, her eyes dark with focus, silver flecks shimmering. Then she laughed, a sound like music flowing through the room. "Lieutenant Kane," she said, her voice warm and approving, "your tactical brilliance exceeds expectations. You have proven that your mind is quick, adaptable, and formidable. This is rare among humans." Orion allowed himself a smile. Pride surged through him, tempered by relief. He had navigated the most complex and high-pressure tactical challenge of his life, in front of the galaxy's most critical audience. Lyra stepped back slightly, her skin now displaying a subtle silver-gold pattern, signaling curiosity and amusement. "You have passed the tactical portion of the trial, but the challenges are far from over. Next, we test courage, heart, and emotional resilience. Only then will we see whether you are truly capable of matching a Ctheran commander in all aspects." Orion's pulse quickened. He had proven himself with intellect and strategy, but he knew the coming trials would be even more unpredictable. He glanced at the circle of spectators, sensing the anticipation building. Diplomats whispered, officers leaned forward, and Arya gave him a thumbs up, silently urging him onward. Orion Kane straightened his shoulders, squared his jaw, and prepared for the next stage. He had survived the trial of tactical brilliance, but the real test was just beginning. Emotional courage. Orion Kane felt the weight of the room pressing down on him. He had survived the tactical challenges, impressed Commander Lyra Vera, and even managed to maintain some dignity in front of dozens of alien dignitaries. But now, Lyra's eyes glimmered in a way that made him realize the stakes were about to shift. "Lieutenant Kane," she said, her voice calm but carrying an edge that demanded attention. "You have proven your mind is capable, your strategy sound, but intellect alone does not complete the trial. Next, we test emotional courage. Are you prepared to reveal truths you may have hidden from everyone, even yourself?" Orion's stomach tightened. Emotional courage. This was uncharted territory. He had trained for combat, tactical planning, and diplomacy, but exposing his deepest truths, in front of dozens of witnesses, many of whom were recording every word, that was terrifying. I'm ready, Commander," he said, trying to steady his voice. Lyra's skin shifted in swirling patterns of gold and silver, signaling intrigue and attention. "Good. Your challenge is simple to state. Tell me something about yourself that you have never shared with anyone else. A truth that reflects your fears, desires, or doubts. Be honest. Hesitation will reveal weakness." Orion swallowed hard. His mind raced. What could he say? How much was too much? How much was brave enough? The crowd leaned in, sensing the gravity of the moment. Even Arya Solis, standing just behind him, watched silently, her eyes wide. He took a slow breath. "Commander Vera," he began, "I have spent my life following orders, learning tactics, anticipating moves. I've trained to be the best officer I can. But I have a fear I rarely admit. I fear failing, not just in a mission, but failing the people who rely on me. I fear making mistakes that hurt others. And, until tonight, I've never allowed anyone to see that side of me. I've always hidden it behind discipline and confidence." The room remained quiet. Even the whispers seemed to stop. All eyes were on him. He could feel his heartbeat pounding in his chest. Lyra's silver-flecked eyes softened. Her skin glimmered in slow, mesmerizing waves. "Interesting," she said. "You show vulnerability. You admit fear and still face the challenge. That is courageous. Very few humans could do this, especially in front of an audience." Orion exhaled, though he didn't lower his guard. The challenge wasn't over. I want to do more than just follow orders. I want to understand, to connect, to contribute meaningfully. I've learned strategies, tactics, and diplomacy, but I've rarely allowed myself to act from the heart. Until now." Lyra tilted her head, her sharp ears pointing forward in what Orion recognized as curiosity. "Courage is more than physical strength. It is honesty, vulnerability, and the willingness to act despite fear. You demonstrate that, and it is commendable." The crowd shifted, visibly reacting. Some were impressed by Orion's honesty, while others whispered in astonishment. In a galaxy where power and protocol often ruled, emotional courage was rare and compelling. "Very well," Lyra continued, stepping closer. Her skin glowed with subtle gold patterns, signaling a mixture of approval and anticipation. "Next, I test your ability to respond under emotional pressure. You must remain true to yourself while navigating my provocations. Are you ready?" Orion squared his shoulders, forcing calm over the nervous adrenaline flooding his system. "I am ready, Commander." Lyra's smile grew slightly enigmatic. "You must also demonstrate empathy. Recognize the intentions and emotions of others, even when they are concealed. This is critical to understanding a Ctheran commander, and to survive the next challenge." Orion nodded. He focused on her expression, the shifting colors of her skin, the smallest gestures of her hands and posture. He had learned to read humans, but aliens were different. Every subtle movement here could reveal meaning, intention, or expectation. He studied her carefully. "Lieutenant Kane," she said, her voice dropping into a musical cadence that held the room's attention completely. "Describe a moment of failure in your life. Not a tactical failure, but one that taught you something essential. Be sincere, and do not hide." Orion's mind flashed back to his early missions. Times he had misjudged enemy tactics, failed to protect civilians, and had moments of regret that haunted him. He chose the one that was most personal. "During my first command mission," he said quietly, "I underestimated the enemy's approach. I made a decision based on incomplete data, and it resulted in unnecessary loss. I couldn't save everyone. I carry that with me, but I've learned from it. I've learned to anticipate more, to listen more, and to value the lives of those under my command. I've become a better officer, not because of success, but because of that failure. Lyra's expression softened. Her skin shifted to a warm golden hue, interlaced with silver patterns that seemed to shimmer with her emotions. You have not only acknowledged your mistakes but learned from them. That is courage. That is strength. Most would hide this truth. Most would speak only of victories. You are exceptional, Lieutenant Kane. Orion felt a mix of relief and pride. He had faced the challenge and survived. His honesty, his vulnerability had impressed her. But he knew better than to relax. Lyra's trials were unpredictable. Her next move could change the course of the evening entirely. She stepped back slightly, her presence still commanding and magnetic. The final emotional challenge requires not only honesty but choice. You must decide whether to fully trust the trial, trust me, and embrace the unknown outcome. Are you prepared to do so? Orion's pulse quickened. He glanced around the circle of witnesses, the diplomats, the officers, the alien dignitaries recording every moment. He realized that stepping forward would be more than courage, it would be commitment. I am prepared, Commander, he said firmly. Lyra's smile widened, her skin glowing with a pattern of gold and silver that Orion instinctively understood as approval. Then we proceed. Your emotional courage has been tested, but the final challenge of this phase will combine mind, heart, and spirit. Only then will we see if you are truly ready to face the complete trial of compatibility. Orion swallowed hard, his excitement and fear mingling. He had faced intellect and tactics. He had revealed his vulnerabilities, but he sensed that the most dangerous and revealing test was still ahead. The crowd leaned closer, anticipation growing, sensing a climax that could either elevate or shatter the human lieutenant before them. And in that moment, Orion Kane realized one undeniable truth. The trial of a Ctheran commander was more than a challenge. It was an experience that could change his life forever. Combat of minds. Orion Kane felt a shiver of anticipation as Commander Lyra Vera's silver-flecked eyes fixed on him. He had faced the tactical challenges and proved his emotional courage. But Lyra's expression made it clear. The next test would combine intellect, quick thinking, and adaptability. This was the phase that would reveal whether he could truly match a Ctheran commander, not just in strategy but in mental agility. Lieutenant Kane, Lyra began, her melodic voice carrying across the observation hall. You have demonstrated tactical brilliance and emotional courage, but true compatibility requires intellect. We now enter the phase of the combat of minds. Orion's pulse quickened. Combat of minds? He asked. Yes, Lyra said, a faint smile playing on her lips. This is an exercise in rapid thinking, critical analysis, and creative problem-solving. I will present you with scenarios, ideas, and challenges. Your task is to respond intelligently, decisively, and creatively. Are you prepared? Orion nodded. I am ready, Commander Vera. Lyra's skin shifted in shimmering patterns of gold and silver, signaling her approval. She began. Scenario 1. You are faced with a Ctheran fleet approaching a neutral system. Their movements are deliberate but unpredictable. Your intelligence reports are incomplete. How do you proceed? Orion's mind raced. This was more than a hypothetical, it was a test of intuition and adaptability. I would first gather as much information as possible from available sources, he said carefully. Then, I would position my fleet to defend critical points while keeping a reserve force flexible. I would also analyze patterns in the enemy's behavior, anticipating possible tactics. Finally, I would prepare contingency plans for rapid adaptation if they deviate from expected movements. Lyra tilted her head, impressed. Good, but the Ctheran fleet may anticipate your predictions. How would you respond if they take an unexpected, aggressive course? Orion's thoughts sharpened. Then I would employ deception. I would use feints and diversions to confuse the enemy while simultaneously adjusting my strategy. I would communicate rapidly with allies to coordinate countermeasures, even improvising signals if standard communication is compromised. Flexibility and rapid adaptation are key. Lyra's skin glowed brighter, silver streaks weaving through the gold. You are quick-thinking, adaptive, excellent. She leaned closer, her voice softening, carrying a note of both challenge and promise. Scenario 2. You are tasked with negotiating peace between two species whose cultural norms and communication methods conflict dramatically. How do you ensure success? Orion's brain kicked into high gear. I would first study each species' cultural protocols, emotional cues, and priorities. I would establish trust, listening carefully and speaking with precision. I would avoid assumptions and remain flexible, adjusting my approach based on their responses. I would seek common ground while respecting their differences, aiming for a solution that benefits both parties without compromising principles or ethics. Lyra's ears tilted forward, a subtle but clear sign of approval. Her skin shimmered, shifting in intricate patterns that Orion had begun to understand. She was pleased, intrigued, and testing him simultaneously. Scenario 3, Lyra said, her tone taking on a rapid rhythm. You are aboard a starship where a critical system failure occurs. Communications are cut, the life support system is compromised, and crew members are injured. Simultaneously, a diplomatic delegation is visiting, unaware of the danger. How do you respond? Orion's heartbeat quickened. This was a multi-layered problem, testing his tactical, emotional, and decision-making skills simultaneously. I would prioritize life support and crew safety first, he said quickly. I would assign tasks to capable officers, triage the injured, and isolate the affected systems. Simultaneously, I would manage the diplomatic delegation calmly, ensuring they understand the situation without panic. Communication would be concise, transparent, and authoritative, balancing urgency with professionalism. I would coordinate resources to resolve the crisis efficiently while maintaining composure under pressure. Lyra's eyes widened slightly, silver flecks gleaming. Impressive. You maintain control under pressure, balancing multiple priorities while protecting lives and preserving diplomacy. Few humans could do this. Orion allowed himself a small, confident nod. He was holding his ground. He was matching her intellect, keeping pace with her rapid-fire scenarios. The crowd around them leaned forward, captivated. Alien dignitaries whispered, some taking careful notes, while humans exchanged looks of astonishment. Lyra's voice softened, carrying the weight of authority and challenge. Scenario 4. You must respond to a philosophical and ethical dilemma. A colonized planet faces imminent natural disaster. Resources are limited. Do you prioritize evacuation of the greatest number of colonists, or preservation of vital infrastructure to save the planet's long-term viability? Justify your decision. Orion's mind raced, balancing ethics, strategy, and foresight. Commander Vera, I would prioritize human life first. Every life has intrinsic value. However, I would also deploy resources to preserve critical infrastructure where feasible, ensuring long-term survival is possible. Decisions would be calculated, but empathy and ethics guide action. The balance between immediate survival and long-term stability is delicate, but life is paramount. Lyra's skin shimmered in complex patterns, her approval evident. You reason with both heart and mind, strategy and morality together. Excellent. She paused, letting the weight of her gaze settle on him. Final intellectual challenge for this stage, she said, stepping closer. Engage me in rapid debate. Analyze, counter, and respond in real time. This is a test of adaptability, creativity, and mental resilience. Begin. Orion's pulse quickened. Every ounce of training, knowledge, and observation he had accumulated surged forward. Lyra launched into a rapid, complex argument. A mixture of tactical reasoning, philosophical questioning, and alien cultural nuances. Orion responded with counterpoints, drawing from human military theory, diplomacy, and logical deduction. The conversation became a fast-paced exchange, each testing the other's intellect. The crowd watched, spellbound. Diplomats leaned forward, Officers whispered in astonishment, and even Arya Solis looked amazed. Orion's mind raced, analyzing her arguments and crafting responses in seconds. Every answer was precise, adaptable, and thoughtful. Finally, Lyra stopped, her silver-flecked eyes glinting with approval. "Lieutenant Kane," she said, her voice warm and approving. "You have matched me in intellect and adaptability. Few humans could maintain composure and brilliance under such scrutiny. You have survived the combat of minds." Orion exhaled, feeling a rush of relief and pride. He had navigated complex strategies, ethical dilemmas, and rapid-fire debates, and impressed a Ctheran commander in front of the galaxy's most influential audience. Lyra stepped back slightly, her skin now shimmering in a harmonious blend of gold and silver. But the trial is not yet complete. Tactical skill, emotional courage, and intellect are necessary, but compatibility requires one final element: trust and connection. Trust and connection. Orion Kane's heart pounded. He had survived the tactical challenges, emotional courage test, and the combat of minds. Commander Lyra Vera's gaze was sharp yet curious, and he knew the next phase, the test of trust and connection, would push him further than any challenge before. Lyra's golden and silver patterned skin shimmered softly as she spoke. "Lieutenant Kane, the final stage of the trial requires you to demonstrate trust, empathy, and connection. This is the core of compatibility in Ctheran culture. Are you ready to engage fully, without hesitation?" Orion drew in a deep breath. He had trained for combat, strategy, and diplomacy, but this was different. Vulnerability, intuition, and emotional resonance were now at the forefront. "I am ready, Commander Vera," he said firmly. "Good," she replied, her voice melodic yet commanding. "The first exercise: respond intuitively to my cues. Observe my behavior, my tone, and my subtle gestures. You must act in accordance with my intentions without direct instruction." Orion's eyes sharpened as he studied her carefully. Every shift in skin color, every tilt of her head, every inflection in her voice was meaningful. He noted the subtle silver streaks that suggested curiosity and the deeper gold that signaled approval. Lyra took a slow step closer, her presence both intimidating and magnetic. "Lieutenant Kane, I want you to mirror my intentions and anticipate my thoughts in this simple exercise. Show me that you understand, even when I do not speak." Orion nodded, moving subtly in response to her gestures. When she raised her hand slightly, he mirrored it instinctively, matching her stance. When her skin shifted to a warm gold, he understood it as encouragement and continued with careful attentiveness. "You are observing well," Lyra said, a faint smile playing across her lips. "Now, second exercise: shared decision-making under pressure. I will describe a scenario, and you must propose a solution that aligns with both my expectations and your own judgment." Orion listened intently. Scenario: a neutral colony is threatened by a rogue asteroid. Evacuation must occur quickly, but local resources are limited. There are cultural considerations to respect. What is your approach? He paused for only a moment, then replied with clarity. "We prioritize safety first. I would coordinate rapid evacuation while respecting local traditions, ensuring transparency and empathy. Simultaneously, I would allocate resources to minimize property and cultural loss. Communication would be clear and adaptive, and I would consult you continuously to ensure alignment with your perspective." Lyra's ears tilted forward, a subtle sign of approval. "Excellent. You demonstrate awareness of both outcome and intention. You are thinking with both your mind and your heart. Very few humans can achieve this." Orion felt a surge of pride but kept his focus. The trial was far from over. Lyra took another step closer, and Orion could feel the warmth of her presence. "Final exercise," she said, her voice dropping into an intimate cadence. "This is a demonstration of emotional resonance. You must respond honestly and courageously to my most personal cues. Trust me, and trust yourself." Orion's pulse quickened. He had prepared for every challenge except this. where misjudgment could shatter the trial entirely. Yet, he also sensed that this was the defining moment. He met her eyes, silver flecks shimmering, and allowed himself to focus entirely on her presence. Lyra's skin shifted subtly, blending gold and silver in patterns that Orion had learned to read. Lieutenant Kane, consider this. I am offering a gesture of partnership. A simple invitation, yet profound in meaning. How do you respond? Orion's mind raced briefly, but then clarity emerged. He straightened his shoulders and held her gaze. Commander Vera, he said steadily, I accept your gesture. I trust your guidance, and I trust my judgment. I am ready to step forward with full commitment. Lyra's expression softened, and her skin glowed in warm, harmonious patterns. She extended her arm formally, a traditional Theran invitation to partnership. You have demonstrated courage, intellect, emotional depth, and now trust. You have passed the final stage of the trial, Lieutenant Kane. The observation hall erupted with murmurs, applause, and astonished whispers. Alien officers nodded in approval, human diplomats exchanged impressed glances, and even Arya Solis allowed herself a small smile of admiration. Orion felt a rush of relief and exhilaration. He had navigated every challenge, the tactical, the intellectual, the emotional, and now the deeply personal. Yet, standing before Commander Lyra Vera, he realized that the trial had transformed him in ways he had not anticipated. Lieutenant Kane, Lyra said, her voice softening, you have shown me that honesty, courage, and intelligence are not mutually exclusive. You are worthy of further interaction, not merely as a subject of observation, but as a potential partner in the fullest sense. Orion's chest swelled with pride. He had survived the trial, yes, but more importantly, he had grown. Every instinct, every calculation, every brave choice had led to this moment. Lyra stepped back slightly, her presence still commanding, yet her smile carried warmth and promise. The trial may be complete, but the journey is just beginning. Compatibility is more than skill. It is connection, trust, and shared experience. You have earned the right to explore that with me, if you are willing. Orion took a deep breath, his excitement mingling with anticipation. Commander Vera, he said, meeting her gaze, I am ready. I am willing to learn, to adapt, and to continue this journey with you. The observation hall erupted again. Cheers, applause, and amazed whispers filling the room. Orion Kane had passed the trial, but he understood that this was more than victory. It was an opportunity, a challenge, and a connection that would change the course of his life forever. And in that moment, as Commander Lyra Vera's eyes shimmered with approval and curiosity, Orion realized that some trials were not about winning or losing. They were about growth, trust, and embracing the unknown together. The final revelation. Orion Kane felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He had survived every trial. Tactical brilliance, emotional courage, mental agility, and the test of trust. Now, standing in the center of the observation hall of the Celestial Harmony, he faced the final phase, the ultimate revelation of compatibility. Commander Lyra Vera's silver-flecked eyes held a mixture of curiosity, challenge, and something else. Something Orion had not yet fully understood. Her golden and silver patterned skin shimmered subtly, signaling anticipation and approval. The audience of alien officers, diplomats, and humans fell silent, sensing that the climax of the trial was at hand. Lieutenant Kane, Lyra said, her voice melodic yet commanding, you have demonstrated courage, intellect, and trust. But the final evaluation requires one thing, your choice. You must decide whether to embrace the journey fully or step back. This decision will define not only your status in my eyes, but the future of our engagement. Orion's heart pounded. He had navigated every challenge, proving himself in ways he had never imagined. But now the test was no longer about skill or strategy. It was about commitment, vulnerability, and the willingness to step into the unknown. He glanced around the room. The audience watched, but he focused entirely on Lyra. Her presence was magnetic, her expression unreadable yet compelling. He realized that everything he had learned during the trial, the observation, the intellect, the empathy, the trust, led to this single moment. "Commander Vera," he said, his voice steady, "I have faced every challenge you set before me. I have acted with honesty, courage, and intellect. Now I choose to continue. I choose to embrace this journey, whatever it may bring. I trust you, and I trust myself to rise to whatever lies ahead." Lyra's silver-flecked eyes softened, and a small, radiant smile appeared on her lips. Her skin shimmered in intricate patterns of gold and silver, signaling not only approval but deep admiration. "Lieutenant Kane," she said, "your choice demonstrates the qualities I hope to find: courage, integrity, and willingness to grow. You have passed the trial in every sense. The journey of compatibility is not simply about proving worth. It is about mutual understanding, respect, and shared experience. You are ready." The crowd erupted with applause, cheers, and astonished whispers. Alien officers nodded in admiration, diplomats exchanged impressed glances, and human colleagues who had doubted his abilities now looked at Orion with awe. Even Arya Solis, standing quietly nearby, allowed herself a small, approving smile. Orion felt a rush of relief and pride. He had survived not just a test of skill, but a journey that had challenged his mind, heart, and spirit. Yet, standing before Lyra, he realized that the trial had revealed something more profound, a connection that transcended protocol, strategy, and culture. Lyra extended her hand formally, a gesture of stern partnership. "Lieutenant Kane," she said, "this is not merely an invitation to collaboration. It is a commitment to understanding, learning, and growing together. You have earned this. Choose wisely, and the path ahead will be unlike any you have experienced." Orion stepped forward, taking her hand with quiet determination. "I choose this path, Commander. I accept the journey, the challenges, and the trust it requires." The room held its breath as Lyra nodded, her expression warm and approving. Her skin shimmered in gold and silver patterns that seemed almost like a celebration. "Then let it begin," she said. "The trial has ended, but the partnership, our journey, has only just begun." Orion felt a mixture of exhilaration and awe. He had begun the evening as a tactical officer attending a diplomatic reception. He had stumbled with a careless comment, sparking chaos and embarrassment. Yet, through courage, intellect, emotional openness, and trust, he had transformed the moment of awkwardness into an extraordinary opportunity. The observers slowly dispersed, whispers of admiration and astonishment filling the hall. Orion and Lyra remained in the center, the only two fully aware of the significance of this moment. It was not victory in the traditional sense. It was mutual recognition, respect, and the beginning of something entirely new. Lyra's smile lingered as she studied him, her silver-flecked eyes shimmering with curiosity. "Lieutenant Kane," she said softly, "never forget that true trials do not end. Every day, every decision will offer new challenges. But today, you have proven that you are capable of meeting them with skill, courage, and heart." Orion nodded, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. "I understand, Commander, and I am ready for whatever comes next." For the first time that evening, Orion allowed himself to fully appreciate the journey he had undertaken. What began as a single reckless comment had become a trial of intellect, courage, emotional depth, and trust. It had tested every aspect of him and revealed strengths he hadn't known he possessed. Lyra extended her arm again, this time not in ceremony but in partnership. Orion took it, feeling the warmth and subtle strength of her presence. Together, they stepped forward, leaving the center of the observation hall, surrounded by a galaxy of witnesses who had watched history unfold. In that moment, Orion Kane realized a truth that went beyond strategy, intellect, or courage. Some trials are not about proving yourself. They are about growing, connecting, and stepping into the unknown with trust and integrity. And as the doors of the celestial harmony opened to the stars beyond, he knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. The next stage will test your ability to respond to unpredictability, heart, and cultural nuance. Are you prepared, Lieutenant Kane? Orion squared his shoulders, determination blazing in his eyes. I am prepared, Commander Vera. The observation hall seemed to hold its collective breath. Every witness leaned forward, sensing the climax approaching. Orion knew the next phase, the test of emotional connection and cultural intuition, would be the most revealing, most dangerous, and perhaps most transformative of the trial. And in that moment, he realized something he hadn't before. This trial was more than a test. It was a journey into understanding, trust, and the unknown, and he was ready to take the next step.